Captain Vorax clicked his mandibles together in what his species considered a smirk. The holographic display before him showed the primitive vessel that had just entered the outer rim of the Gantari system. Pathetic, simply pathetic. Magnify, he ordered, his voice a gravelly rumble that reverberated across the command deck of the inevitable Conquest. The image zoomed in, revealing a patchwork ship of mismatched metals and outdated propulsion systems. Its hull was scarred with micrometeor impacts and crude repairs. How such a contraption managed interstellar travel was beyond Vorax's comprehension. "Analysis complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Draz, her four eyes blinking in sequence as data scrolled across her console. "The vessel appears to belong to a species calling themselves humans, previously unknown to the Tarkarian Empire. Biosigns indicate approximately 50 individuals aboard. Weapons systems are, practically non-existent. Basic kinetic projectiles and rudimentary energy shielding." Vorax flicked his tail in amusement. "So we have discovered another group of space cubs. How quaint." The bridge crew chuckled, a chorus of clicks and whistles that echoed through the command center. The Tarkarian Empire had conquered 12 star systems in the past decade alone. Each new species they encountered followed the same pattern. Initial resistance, crushing defeat, then servitude. These humans would be no different. "Open communications," Vorax commanded, straightening his armored torso. The ceremonial scars across his exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lighting, each mark representing a successful conquest. "Channel open, Captain," replied Communications Officer Plex, her tentacles dancing across the console. "Attention, unknown vessel. This is Captain Vorax of the Tarkarian Empire warship Inevitable Conquest. You have entered sovereign Tarkarian space. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and classification. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." The standard greeting for new species, efficient and to the point. After a moment of silence, the view screen flickered and revealed the interior of the human vessel. Boris barely suppressed a laugh. Their command center was laughably small, with primitive control interfaces and what appeared to be those actual physical buttons. How barbaric! A single human stood in the center of their bridge. The creature was bipedal, mostly hairless except for a patch on top of its head, with no natural armor or visible defensive capabilities. It wore some sort of fabric covering. Another sign of evolutionary weakness. Most troubling of all, it had only 2 eyes. How could any species navigate three-dimensional space with such limited visual input? "This is Captain Eleanor Beck of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon," the human said, its voice surprisingly steady. "We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your empire." Vorax exchanged amused glances with his second-in-command. "Peace is certainly an option, Captain Beck. Submit to inspection and classification, and perhaps your species will be granted protectorate status within our empire. The alternative is less pleasant." The human's face changed slightly. Was that a smile? Hard to tell with such alien physiognomy. "We understand, Captain Vorax. We'll prepare for your boarding party. Please be advised that our airlock systems are still somewhat experimental. We have had a few accidents." Vorax snorted. "Your technological inadequacies are not our concern. Prepare to be boarded in 20 minutes. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." "Understood, Captain. We look forward to meeting you face to face." Beck out. The transmission ended, and Vorax turned to his officers. "Prepare a standard boarding party. Level 2 biohazard protocols. These humans appear primitive, but could carry unknown pathogens." "Yes, Captain," replied Security Chief Kraz, already selecting personnel from his roster. "Should we prepare holding cells for specimens?" "Of course. The Imperial xenobiologists will want at least 3 for study. Select the healthiest-looking ones." Vorax settled back into his command chair, feeling the familiar satisfaction of another easy conquest. These humans would make suitable laborers for the mineral extraction colonies in the Vexor system. Their ship, primitive as it was, demonstrated they could survive harsh conditions, a valuable trade in slaves. "Lieutenant Draz, conduct a full scan of their vessel. I want to know everything about their technology before our boarding party arrives." Draz turned back to her console, her claws clicking rapidly. After several minutes she frowned, an expression that involved the rearrangement of her facial plates in a distinctly displeased pattern. "Sir, I'm getting some unusual readings. Their power core is strange. It doesn't match any known configuration in our database. Vorax waved a dismissive hand. Primitive species often develop unconventional solutions due to resource limitations, nothing to concern ourselves with. Yes, Captain, but there's something else. Draz sounded genuinely perplexed. Their communication system is broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, including several we use for secure military transmissions. Yet they showed no signs of intercepting our communications. That was odd. Vorax frowned. Perhaps their systems are malfunctioning, or leaking radiation across the spectrum. Possibly, sir, but it's very precisely aligned with our frequencies. Vorax felt the first twinge of unease but quickly suppressed it. Continue monitoring. The boarding party will determine the truth soon enough. 20 minutes later, the Tarkarian boarding shuttle docked with the human vessel. Security Chief Kraz led 12 heavily armed soldiers through the airlock, their body armor designed to withstand virtually any known weapon. Vorax watched through Kraz's helmet camera as the boarding party entered the human ship. The interior was cramped, with exposed pipes and wiring running along the corridors. Everything looked worn, patched, and outdated. The lighting was dim, further evidence of their energy inefficiency. A small group of humans waited to greet them, including the one called Beck. Up close, the humans looked even more fragile. Their skin was soft, with no natural protection. Their limbs were spindly compared to Tarkarian physiology, and their faces were eerily expressive, constantly shifting in subtle ways that Vorax found disturbing. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," said Beck, extending a five-fingered hand toward Kraz. "We are honored to be the first humans to meet your species." Kraz ignored the gesture. "You will submit to scanning and classification. 3 of you will return with us for biological study. The rest will remain here until the captain determines your disposition." The human's expression changed again, eyebrows rising slightly.
I see.
"Perhaps we could discuss alternatives. We have much to offer in trade and cultural exchange." Kraz laughed, the sound harsh through his helmet speakers. "You have nothing we need, human. Your technology is primitive, your physiology weak. You exist now only by the mercy of the Tarkarian Empire." Back on the bridge, Vorax nodded in approval. Riaz was following standard first contact protocols perfectly. The human captain exchanged glances with her companions.
Was that?
Amusement in their expressions. "Surely not." "Well," said Beck, "since we are at your mercy, perhaps you'd like a tour of our ship. It might help you determine our usefulness." "Proceed," Kraz ordered, signaling half his soldiers to spread out and secure the vessel. As the tour progressed, Vorax found himself increasingly puzzled. The humans made no attempt to hide their technological inferiority. In fact, they seemed almost proud of their jury-rigged systems and makeshift repairs. They freely admitted their vessel was one of their oldest still in service, practically obsolete by their own standards. "And this," Beck said, leading them into a large chamber, "is our primary cargo hold, currently empty, as we were on an exploratory mission when we encountered your ship." Kraz panned his camera around the space. It was large, surprisingly so for a vessel this size, and oddly reinforced with heavy structural bracing and what appeared to be impact-resistant paneling. "Why is your cargo hold so fortified?" Kraz asks, suspicion evident in his voice. Beck shrugged, an oddly expressive gesture involving both shoulders. "This ship was originally designed for mining operations. The reinforcement was necessary for transporting dense ore samples. We repurposed it for exploration when newer mining vessels were developed." The explanation seemed reasonable, but something about it made Vorax's scales itch. He was about to instruct Kraz to press further when Lieutenant Draz interrupted. "Captain, I'm detecting energy fluctuations from the human vessel. Their power core is changing somehow." Vorax leaned forward. "Explain." "I can't, sir. It's like nothing in our records. One moment it reads as a basic fusion reactor. The next I don't know what it is." On screen, Beck was continuing the tour, showing Kraz what appeared to be their food production area, a pathetically small hydroponics section growing what looked like inedible vegetation. Vorax called through the comm. "Ask them about their power systems." The security chief nodded imperceptibly and turned to Beck. "Your propulsion and power generation, show us now." Beck's expression shifted again. "Of course. Though I should warn you, Our engineering section is somewhat temperamental. We have had to make adaptations for deep space travel that aren't exactly standard. She led them through several narrow corridors to a sealed door.
Our engineering bay.
I should mention that our chief engineer is a bit eccentric. Please don't mind his manner. The door slid open to reveal a chaotic space filled with humming machinery. A human with facial hair covering the lower half of its face looked up from a console. Visitors, Mikkel Beck said. They are interested in our propulsion systems. The engineer Mikkel looked the Tarkarians up and down, then grinned, showing flat teeth unsuitable for proper combat. Well, ain't that just perfect timing? I was just about to run a diagnostic on the fold drive. Fold drive? Vorax hadn't heard that term before. Some primitive human technology, no doubt. Explain your power generation and propulsion, Kraz demanded. Mikkel scratched his facial hair. Well, for daily operations, we use a pretty standard helium-3 fusion reactor. Nothing fancy there, gets us moving at about 0.15 C at full burn. The fold drive is for the longer jumps, but we don't use it much. Eats power like crazy and gives everyone headaches. Vorax frowned. Ziratai frowned. 0.15 Cs was faster than he'd expected from such a primitive-looking vessel, but still well below Tarkarian capabilities. But what was this fold drive? Some sort of primitive FTL attempt. Show me this fold drive, Kraz ordered. Mikkel shrugged. Can't really show it. It's more conceptual than physical, if you get my meaning. Manipulates space-time in ways that don't play nice with visual inspection. Vorax didn't like this. The human was being evasive, and something about their demeanor seemed off. They were too calm, too accommodating. Kraz, bring 3 specimens and return to the ship immediately, he ordered. On screen, Kraz nodded. You heard the captain, you 3 will come with us. He pointed to Beck and 2 others. Beck's expression didn't change. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Security Chief Kraz. The Tarkarian soldiers immediately raised their weapons. This is not a request, human. You will comply or be terminated. Beck sighed. Another strange human gesture. You misunderstand. I'm not refusing. I'm simply stating a fact. Your departure is no longer possible. At that moment, alarms blared across the inevitable conquest. Captain, Lieutenant Draz shouted, her voice pitched higher than normal. Multiple contacts appearing around us. They are everywhere. Vorax spun toward the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. Where moments ago there had been only the single pathetic human vessel, now there were dozens of ships, large ships, warships. Impossible, he whispered. Where did they come from? Unknown, sir. They are not registering on our approach sensors. They are just appearing. On the view screen, Beck's expression had changed completely. The submissive, eager-to-please demeanor was gone, replaced by something hard and predatory. You see, Captain Vorax, she said, her voice now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. We humans have a saying, don't judge a book by its cover. I believe the translation would be something like, appearances can be deceiving. Kraz raised his weapon, but before he could fire, something happened to the air around him. It seemed to shimmer, and suddenly additional humans appeared in the engineering bay, as if materializing from nothing. Each held weapons pointed directly at the Tarkarian boarding party. Active camouflage, Vorax growled. Primitive cloaking technology won't save you, human. Beck laughed, a sound that now seemed considerably less harmless than before. Not cloaking, Captain, dimension shifting. Your sensors can't detect what exists slightly out of phase with your reality. Sir, Draz reported, her voice shaking. The ships surrounding us. They are massive. Military configuration, weapons locked on us, and I'm detecting thousands more vessels appearing throughout the system. They are everywhere. On screen, Beck straightened her posture. The horizon serves as what you might call a scout ship, Captain Vorax. But it's not quite as primitive as we led you to believe. We wanted to observe how you would react to a seemingly vulnerable species. Your response has been informative. Vorax felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. This had been a test. They had been evaluated. You tricked us, he snarled. No, Captain. We gave you an opportunity. You chose conquest over diplomacy, threats over cooperation, enslavement over alliance. Beck's voice was calm, clinical even. "We have encountered your type before, species that see the universe as a hierarchy of predator and prey." The tactical display continued to fill with new contacts as more human ships phased into normal space. The inevitable conquest, once the pride of the Tarkarian fleet, was now surrounded and hopelessly outgunned. "What happens now?" Vorax asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Beck's face formed that expression again. That slight upturn of the lips that Vorax now recognized wasn't submission at all. It was confidence. Superiority. "Now, Captain? Now we negotiate. But the terms have changed somewhat." She glanced around at the captured boarding party. "Your personnel will be returned unharmed. Consider it a gesture of good faith. And if we refuse your terms?" Beck's expression didn't change, but her eyes, those two inadequate eyes, somehow seemed to harden. "That would be unwise, Captain. You see, you called us cubs, weak, primitive cubs to be conquered and enslaved. But on Earth, cubs grow up. Some become docile creatures. Others—" She paused, and that smile widened just a fraction. "Others become wolves." A new transmission suddenly cut across all channels. The view screen shifted to show another human, older than Beck, wearing what appeared to be a formal uniform adorned with various symbols. "This is Admiral Helena Kwan of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The vessel you have accosted is under our protection. You will stand down immediately and prepare for diplomatic contact. Any aggressive action will be met with overwhelming force." Vorax looked from the Admiral to the tactical display, where the number of human ships continued to increase. Then to the feed from Kreitz's helmet, where his boarding party was now thoroughly surrounded by armed humans who had appeared from literally nowhere. For the first time in his career, Captain Vorax Tull found himself completely outmaneuvered. "Lieutenant Draz," he said quietly, "power down weapon systems. Open a channel to this Admiral Kwan." As his crew rushed to comply, Vorax couldn't help but wonder how many other empires had made the same mistake, underestimating these humans because of their soft appearance and seemingly primitive technology. They had called them cubs, never imagining they were dealing with wolves in disguise. And now, the hunt had begun. Back on the horizon, Captain Beck watched as the Tarkarian boarding party was escorted back to their shuttle. Security Chief Kraz paused before entering the airlock, turning his armored head toward her. "This deception," he said, his voice like gravel, "it was unnecessary. Dishonorable." Beck's expression remained neutral. "From our perspective, it was entirely necessary. Your empire has a documented history of subjugating inferior species. We needed to know your true intentions. By lying about your capabilities. By presenting yourselves as weak. By presenting an opportunity for peaceful contact that you immediately squandered." Beck stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We have been watching the Tarkarian Empire for some time, Chief Kraz. Your expansion through this sector hasn't gone unnoticed. The Pelians, the Vox Collective, the Drazari, all conquered, all enslaved." Kraz's posture stiffened. "How do you know of these species? You claim to be new to this region." "I said the Horizon was on an exploratory mission. I never said it was our first." Beck's eyes hardened. The Pelians were particularly forthcoming about Tarkarian hospitality. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Kraz's alien features. "You have had contact with our subject worlds. We prefer the term victims," Beck replied, "and yes, we have had extensive contact. The Pelian resistance has been particularly eager for alliance." "Resistant? There is no resistance. The Pelians were completely subjugated 3 cycles ago." Beck smiled. A predator's smile. "You might want to check on that when you get back. Things change. Especially when cubs learn to hunt." As the Tarkarian shuttle departed, Beck returned to the bridge where her crew waited, tension finally breaking into relieved laughter and backslapping. "Did you see their faces when the fleet phased in?" Lieutenant Park chuckled, mimicking the Tarkarian captain's shocked expression. "I thought that 4-eyed lieutenant was going to faint." "Their scanning technology is even more limited than intelligence suggested," noted Science Officer Thomas, reviewing data from the encounter. "They had no idea our hull was a composite metamaterial disguising our actual capabilities." Beck settled into her command chair, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. The dimensional phase cloak worked perfectly. "Good work, everyone." Her second-in-command, Commander Ravi, approached with a datapad. "Admiral Kwan is requesting a full report." The diplomatic corps is already drafting initial contact protocols. Already? Beck raised an eyebrow. That was fast. I thought we were going with the dangerous predator approach for at least the first round of negotiations. Ravi shrugged. Apparently intelligence has revised their assessment. The Tarkarians respond better to demonstrations of strength, followed by unexpected mercy. Makes them suspicious but compliant. Beck nodded. Considering this, so we show them our teeth, then offer a hand instead of a bite. Exactly. Speaking of which, the Liberation Fleet is requesting permission to begin operations in the Pelion system. Beck's expression grew serious. Tell them to proceed, but with caution. If the Tarkarians realize we are systematically dismantling their empire before negotiations are complete, they'll have no choice but to accept whatever terms we offer, Ravi finished. They are completely outmatched. Perhaps. Beck wasn't so sure. Cornered predators were the most dangerous kind. Has the analysis of their weapons systems been completed? Yes, Captain. Relatively advanced plasma-based weaponry, but nothing that can penetrate our shields. Their FTL capabilities are impressive for their technological level, but still generations behind ours. Beck nodded, then turned to her communications officer. Establish a secure channel to Fleet Command. I want to discuss next steps personally. As her crew carried out their duties with quiet efficiency, Beck couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. Throughout human history, they had often been the underdogs, fighting against superior forces, overcoming seemingly impossible odds through ingenuity and sheer determination. Now, in the vastness of space, they found themselves in the unfamiliar position of being the superior power. The technological and tactical advantages they held over the Tarkarian Empire were substantial. Almost unfair, really. But Beck had read enough history to know how quickly advantages could disappear. The Tarkarians had built their empire through conquest and subjugation. Such empires didn't collapse easily, they fought with desperation and often cruelty. The coming weeks would determine whether this first contact led to peaceful coexistence, or became the opening moves in a much larger conflict. Either way, the Tarkarians had learned an important lesson today. Appearances can be deceiving, and those they deemed weak might prove to be the most dangerous predators of all. As the Horizon moved to rejoin the fleet, its true form finally visible now that the disguise was no longer necessary, Beck prepared for the challenges ahead. The wolves were no longer hiding among the cubs. The hunt had begun in earnest, and Vorax Till, aboard his once mighty warship now surrounded by the vastly superior human fleet, was about to discover just how sharp human teeth could be. 3 planetary rotations had passed since the humiliating encounter with the humans. Captain Vorax Till stood rigidly before the Imperial Command Council, 6 of the most powerful Tarkarians in the galaxy. Their massive chamber, carved from the rarest black stone of their homeworld, was designed to intimidate. Today, it succeeded. You expect us to believe, Grand Marshal Zixis rumbled, his scarred face contorted in disbelief, that a previously unknown species not only evaded our detection networks, but possesses technology that surpasses our own. Vorax fought to keep his posture steady. The evidence is irrefutable, Grand Marshal. Their dimensional phase technology alone represents capabilities at least 3 generations beyond our most advanced research. Dimensional phase technology, scoffed Admiral Krell, the oldest member of the Council. Her scales had faded to a dull gray with age, but her eyes remained sharp as hunting blades. Next you'll tell us they can manipulate gravity or transmute elements. Vorax hesitated. Actually, Admiral, their propulsion systems appear to function on principles of localized space-time manipulation, effectively. Enough! Supreme Commander Drekos slammed his massive fist on the obsidian table. The impact created a spiderweb of cracks across its surface. Captain Tal, your failure to properly assess and subjugate this species is unprecedented. You allowed yourself to be deceived by prey masquerading as predators. With respect, Supreme Commander, Vorax countered, desperation edging into his voice. The humans were never prey. Their deception was tactical, not defensive. They studied us, assessed our responses, and revealed their true capabilities only when it suited them. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. The idea that another species had been observing the Tarkarian Empire without their knowledge was disturbing on a fundamental level. How extensive is their presence in our territory? Asked strategist Mira, the only female on the council besides Admiral Krell. Her question was practical, devoid of the emotional outrage displayed by her colleagues. Vorax activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Based on what we observed during our encounter, they have a substantial fleet presence in at least 3 sectors. However, intelligence now believes their infiltration may be far more extensive. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of Tarkarian space with red indicators highlighting suspected human activity. There were dozens of markers scattered across nearly every sector of the Empire. This cannot be accurate, Admiral Krell whispered, her confidence finally wavering. Our detection systems would have identified such widespread incursions. That's just it, Admiral, Vorax explained. Their dimensional phase technology renders them effectively invisible to our sensors until they choose to reveal themselves. They could have been watching us for years. Grand Marshal Zixus leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. And what of the diplomatic contact they proposed? What demands have they made? Vorax hesitated again. This was the most troubling aspect of all. That's the strangest part, Grand Marshal. They have made no demands for territory, resources, or reparations. Their diplomatic envoys speak only of cooperation, cultural exchange, mutual defense agreements. Deception, spat Commander Dracos. Obviously a ploy to lower our defenses. Perhaps, Vorax acknowledged. But there's something else. Reports from our outpost in the Pelion system indicate irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Strategist Mira asked sharply. Communication disruptions, supply chain inconsistencies, and a 20% reduction in labor output from the Pelion work camps. Admiral Krell's eyes narrowed to slits. You suspect human interference? I suspect human alliance, Vorax corrected. The human captain specifically mentioned contact with the Pelion resistance. There is no Pelion resistance, roared Commander Dracos. We crushed their military 3 cycles ago. The survivors are mindless laborers, nothing more. Vorax pulled up another data file. This footage was captured 2 rotations ago at mining colony P-17. The holographic display showed a security recording from one of the Empire's largest dilithium extraction facilities. Everything appeared normal. Pelion slaves working under the watchful eyes of Tarkarian overseers. Then, without warning, the Pelions simultaneously turned on their guards. Their movements were coordinated, precise, not the desperate actions of slaves, but the disciplined attack of trained fighters. Most disturbing of all, the Pelions were using weapons that shouldn't exist, compact energy weapons that cut through Tarkarian armor like it was fabric. Those are not Tarkarian weapons, Strategist Mira observed, her voice deadly quiet. No, Vorax confirmed. Based on energy signatures, they appear to be of human design, specifically modified for Pelion physiology. The council chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. Vorax stood silently, waiting for the storm to pass. He had expected this reaction. The Tarkarian Empire had been built on the principle that they were the apex predators of the galaxy. The idea that they had been outmaneuvered, worse, that their prey was now hunting them, was almost too much to bear. When order was finally restored, Grand Marshal Zixus fixed Vorax with an intense stare. What are your recommendations, Captain? Vorax took a deep breath. What he was about to propose bordered on heresy. I recommend immediate acceptance of the human diplomatic overtures, full cessation of hostile activities against them and their allies, and he steeled himself, gradual withdrawal from the Pelion, Vox, and Drazari systems. Surrender? Commander Dracos bellowed, rising to his full, intimidating height. You dare suggest we capitulate to these hairless bipeds? I'll have your head mounted in my trophy room for such cowardice. It's not surrender, Vorax insisted. It's strategic realignment. The humans possess technological superiority in virtually every domain. Their fleet outnumbers ours by an unknown factor, and they have demonstrated the ability to arm and organize our subject species against us. He paused, letting the implications sink in. This isn't a battle we can win through conventional means. Our choices are adaptation or extinction. Admiral Krell, who had remained thoughtfully silent during the outburst, finally spoke. You faced these humans directly, Captain. In your assessment, would they accept a peaceful resolution? Or are they intent on our destruction regardless of our actions? It was a fair question, and one Vorax had been pondering since his encounter with Captain Beck and her deceptively primitive vessel. They are different from other species we have encountered, he said carefully. They seem genuinely interested in coexistence despite their military advantages. During our encounter, they had multiple opportunities to destroy the inevitable conquest. They chose restraint instead. Weakness, muttered Commander Drakos, though with less conviction than before. No, Vorkax corrected. Not weakness. Something else. Something I don't fully understand yet. They called it mercy. The council members exchanged glances, the concept clearly alien to them. Very well, Grand Marshal Zixis declared after a long silence. Captain Tull, since you have had the most direct experience with these humans, you will serve as our primary diplomatic liaison. Arrange a meeting with their representatives. Learn everything you can about their intentions and capabilities. Vorax nodded, relieved that at least some of the council seemed to grasp the gravity of their situation. But, the Grand Marshal continued, his voice hardening, simultaneously, Admiral Krell will prepare our forces for potential conflict. If diplomacy fails, we will not go quietly into extinction. The Tarkarian Empire has faced threats before. We have always emerged victorious. Yes, Grand Marshal, Vorax acknowledged, keeping his doubts to himself. No previous threat had been quite like the humans. As the council session concluded, Vorax was approached by strategist Mira. Unlike the other council members, she had a reputation for pragmatism over pride, a rarity among their species. "Walk with me, Captain," she said, not waiting for his response before heading toward the chamber's exit. Once they were in a private corridor, safely away from prying eyes and recording devices, she spoke in a low, urgent tone. "Tell me what you are not telling the council." Vorax hesitated. "Strategist Mira, I have reported everything of significance." "No," she cut him off sharply. "You have reported the facts, yes, but not your instincts. Something about these humans troubles you beyond their technological superiority. I saw it in your posture when you described them." "What aren't you saying?" Vorax glanced around, ensuring they were truly alone. "It's difficult to articulate that humans are paradoxical. Their physical forms suggest vulnerability, yet they have evolved beyond physical combat to something more conceptual. They see warfare differently than we do." "Explain," Mira demanded. "We Tarkarians understand conquest, subjugation, resources, territory. Our motivations are clear, our methods direct." Vorthax struggled to put his unease into words. "The humans speak of concepts like freedom, self-determination, cooperation, ideas we consider weaknesses, yet somehow they have built a military and technological powerhouse around these principles." Mira's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You believe their societal organization gives them advantages?" "I believe," Vorax said carefully, "that we fundamentally misunderstand them, and that makes them far more dangerous than any technological superiority." Mira considered this silently for several moments. "These uprisings on our subject worlds, you think the humans are providing more than just weapons?" "I think they are providing ideology," Vorax confirmed. "Ideas that spread like contagions, impossible to quarantine or eradicate." "Fascinating," Mira murmured, "and potentially catastrophic for our empire." "Precisely why I advocated for diplomatic resolution," Vorax said. "We cannot fight an enemy that transforms our slaves into their allies with mere words." "The Council will never accept significant concessions," Mira warned. "Their pride won't allow it." Vorax's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Then their pride will destroy us all." 3 days later, Vorax found himself aboard the inevitable Conquest once more, this time heading for neutral territory, an uninhabited system designated J9 by Imperial cartographers. The humans had agreed to meet there for preliminary diplomatic discussions. His ship was accompanied by 2 additional battle cruisers, ostensibly as honor guards, but Vorax knew the Council hoped they might gather intelligence on human capabilities. A futile gesture. In his opinion, if humans could manipulate dimensional phase states at will, they would reveal only what they wished to reveal. As they approached the rendezvous coordinates, Lieutenant Draws reported from her sensor station. "Captain, I'm detecting a single vessel at the meeting point." "Just one?" Vorax asked, surprised. He had expected at least a modest show of force. "Yes, sir, and it's the same ship as before. The horizon." Vorax's surprise turned to alarm. "Magnify." The view screen showed the same patchwork vessel they had encountered before, the supposedly primitive exploration ship that had led to their humiliating revelation about human capabilities. It's a message, Vorax realized aloud. They are reminding us of our previous assumptions. Or it's a trap, suggested his new security chief. Vex, who had replaced Kraz after the previous encounter. Kraz had been reassigned to a remote outpost, a humiliating demotion, but better than execution, which many had expected. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so during our first encounter. Vorax reminded him. No, this is psychological. They are establishing dominance before negotiations begin. Captain Draz interrupted, her voice tense. I'm detecting anomalous energy readings from the horizon, similar to the patterns observed before their fleet revealed itself. Vorax felt his scales tighten against his body, an involuntary stress response. Are they phasing in additional ships? Unknown, sir. The readings are consistent with their phase technology, but nothing is materializing on our sensors. Yet, Vorax muttered, open communications channel. The view screen flickered, and Captain Eleanor Beck appeared, looking exactly as she had during their first encounter. Her expression was neutral, professional, showing neither triumph nor hostility. Captain Vorax, she greeted him. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Captain Beck, he acknowledged stiffly. I see you have brought the horizon again, a deliberate choice, I assume? A slight smile curved her lips. Continuity seemed appropriate, and the horizon has certain modifications that make it ideal for diplomatic functions, such as its ability to conceal an entire battle fleet in dimensional phase space. Vorax asked bluntly. Beck's smile widened fractionally. Among other features, rest assured, Captain, we come with peaceful intentions. The only other human vessels present are a small diplomatic shuttle and its escort, currently docked with the horizon. Our sensors detect no such vessels, Vex interjected suspiciously. They wouldn't, Beck replied simply. Standard security protocols. Vorax fought back a surge of frustration. Every interaction with the humans reinforced their technological superiority and by extension the Tarkarian Empire's vulnerability. What are your proposals, Captain Beck? He asked, deciding to dispense with the usual diplomatic posturing. Time was not on their side. Beck seemed mildly surprised by his directness. Actually, Admiral Kwan and our diplomatic team would prefer to discuss terms in person. We have prepared suitable accommodations aboard the horizon for the meeting. Vex bristled visibly. You expect our captain to board your vessel, after your previous deception? The invitation extends to a reasonable security detail, Beck clarified, and as a gesture of good faith, I'm prepared to remain aboard the inevitable Conquest, as your guest while the negotiations take place. Now it was Vorax's turn to be surprised. You would place yourself in our custody. I would place myself in your hospitality, Beck corrected. There's a distinction I hope you appreciate, Captain. The offer was bold, either supremely confident or foolishly naive. Vorax wasn't sure which. If he accepted, Beck would effectively be a hostage. Yet she seemed utterly unconcerned by the prospect. Very well, he decided. I accept your terms. Security Chief Vex will prepare a suitable reception for you while I meet with your admiral. Excellent. Beck nodded, seemingly pleased. Shuttle docking coordinates are being transmitted now. We look forward to productive discussions, Captain. The transmission ended and Vorax turned to find his bridge crew staring at him with varying expressions of disbelief and concern. Sir, Vex began, his voice low, this human captain is placing herself voluntarily in our power. We could extract valuable information. No, Vorax cut him off sharply. She will be treated as an honored diplomatic guest. Nothing less. But, Captain, that's an order, Security Chief. Vorax's tone left no room for argument. I have seen what these humans can do. We will not provoke them through mistreatment of their representative. What Vorax couldn't say, given the monitoring devices surely present on his own bridge, was that he suspected Beck's gesture of good faith was nothing of the sort. No species would send their captain into enemy hands without contingencies. The humans were testing them again, and this time, the stakes were even higher. An hour later, Vorax stood in the airlock of the horizon, accompanied by strategist Mira, who had insisted on joining the diplomatic mission, and 4 armed guards. Despite knowing the ship's primitive appearance was a facade, he was still surprised by the interior transformation. Gone were the exposed pipes, jury-rigged systems, and cramped corridors. Instead, the airlock opened into a spacious, elegantly appointed reception area. A tall, distinguished human with silver hair and a formal uniform waited to greet them. Captain Vorax, Strategist Mira, I am Admiral Helena Kwan of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Welcome aboard the Horizon. Vorax noted that despite her advanced age, evident in her hair color and facial lines, the Admiral stood straight, her posture showing no signs of physical deterioration. Another peculiarity of this species, Admiral Kwan, he acknowledged with a formal bow, a Tarkarian gesture of respect between equals. It cost him nothing to observe the formality and might establish a more productive tone for the negotiations. The Admiral seemed to appreciate the gesture, returning it with a nod of her head. If you'll follow me, we have prepared a conference room for our discussions. Your security detail is welcome to inspect it beforehand, of course. As they moved through the vessel, Vorthabrix observed everything with keen interest. The ship's true nature was now fully revealed, advanced technology integrated seamlessly into what appeared to be an aesthetically pleasing design rather than purely functional. The crew they passed were disciplined and professional, offering respectful nods to both their admiral and the Tarkarian delegation. Your vessel is not as I remember it, Vorax commented. Admiral Kwan smiled slightly. The Horizon adapts to its mission parameters. For first contact scenarios, we find that underestimation often reveals more about a species than intimidation. You mean deception reveals more, Strategist Mira corrected, her tone sharp. Controlled presentation, the Admiral countered smoothly. We have encountered 17 spacefaring civilizations before yours, Strategist Mira. 9 responded to perceived weakness with immediate attempts at dominance or exploitation. And the others, Vorax asked, genuinely curious, responded with diplomatic overtures, offers of assistance, or simply respectful distance. The Admiral's expression hardened slightly. We find it an efficient method for distinguishing between potential allies and potential threats. The implied categorization was clear, and Vorax felt a flicker of anger despite himself. And yet you now offer diplomacy to those you have deemed threats. Why? They had reached the conference room, a circular chamber with a round table at its center. Viewports along one wall offered a spectacular view of the assembled ships. The Horizon in the foreground, the 3 Tarkarian vessels hanging in space beyond. Admiral Kwan gestured for them to take seats. Because Captain Vorthax, humanity has learned some difficult lessons in its history. One of the most important is that enemies can become allies, given the right circumstances and incentives. Strategist Mira's eyes narrowed. What incentives do you offer the Tarkarian Empire? What could you possibly provide that we cannot take by force? Vorax winced internally at Mara's aggressive tone, but Admiral Kwan seemed unperturbed. Survival for one, she replied calmly. Technological exchange for another, and perhaps most valuable of all, a different way of relating to the galaxy and its inhabitants. You speak in riddles, Admiral, Mira said dismissively. Then let me be direct. Kwan tapped a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared above it, a map of the known galaxy, with various regions highlighted in different colors. The Tarkarian Empire, she indicated a red section, has expanded through conquest for the past century, subjugating 12 species and strip mining dozens of worlds. Your model is efficient for rapid acquisition of resources and territory. She paused, allowing a new highlight to appear, a much larger blue section. This is United Earth and its allied worlds. Notice that it encompasses nearly 3 times the territory of your empire, with substantially greater resource availability. Vorax and Mira exchanged glances. If this map was accurate, the human sphere of influence dwarfed their own. Your point, Admiral? Vorax asked. My point, Captain, is that there are more effective models of expansion than conquest. The worlds within our alliance joined voluntarily, contributing their unique strengths to our collective capabilities. Voluntary submission is still submission, Mira argued. Not submission, partnership. Kwan leaned forward. The Pelians, for example, possess remarkable bioengineering expertise that was wasted in your mining operations. As our allies, they have developed agricultural systems that have ended food scarcity on 14 worlds. Vorax felt a chill run through him. You have already formalized alliances with our subject worlds? With those who chose to accept our offer? Yes. Juan's expression remained neutral, but there was steel in her voice. The uprising you have detected is only the beginning, Captain. The Pelion system is already lost to you. The Vox Collective will be next, followed by the Drizari. Mira stood abruptly, her claws extending an instinctive threat display. This is not diplomacy. This is a declaration of war. On the contrary, Quan replied, remaining seated. It's an opportunity. We have no desire to destroy the Tarkarian Empire or your species. We are offering you a transition from conquerors to allies. You would have us release our rightful territories, surrender our subject species, abandon our very nature as predators. Mira's voice had risen to a near shout. I would have you evolve, Quan said simply. As we did. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Vorax, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke. You were once like us, he said, understanding dawning. Conquerors, predators. Her Quan nodded, something like sadness crossing her features. Humanity's history is written in blood, Captain Vorthax. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times before we learned better ways to thrive. She stood, moving to the viewport to gaze out at the ships. Your empire stands at a crossroads. Continue on your current path and you face a war you cannot win against us, and the growing coalition of your former subjects, or adapt, maintain your core worlds, release your conquered territories, and join an alliance that can offer far more than you could ever take by force. Mira snarled, her patience clearly exhausted. This is the diplomacy of the strong imposing their will on the weak. You speak of partnership while holding a blade to our throat. Yes, Quan acknowledged without apology, because we understand what motivates species like yours. You respect strength, you respond to superior force, so we present both the blade and the open hand, allowing you to choose your destiny. She turned back to face them directly. Make no mistake, we will free your subject worlds regardless of your decision today. The only question is whether the Tarkarian Empire will adapt and prosper in a new paradigm, or cling to old ways and face extinction. The bluntness of the statement was shocking. No posturing, no pretense, just the unvarnished truth as the humans saw it. Vorax found himself respecting their directness, even as he grappled with the implications. Everything he had suspected about the humans was being confirmed. They weren't merely technologically superior, they represented a fundamentally different approach to interstellar relations, one that his people had never considered viable. The Council will never accept these terms, Mira said flatly. Then the Council will doom your species, Quan replied, her voice softer but no less resolute. We don't wish for that outcome, Captain Vorax. Your people have remarkable qualities, resilience, determination, discipline. These can be assets to the galactic community, without being weapons of conquest. Vorax considered the human admiral's words carefully. He thought of the Council's pride, their unwillingness to accept the new reality represented by humanity's emergence. He thought of the countless subject species laboring under Tarkarian dominion, now being offered a different path by these strange, paradoxical humans. And he thought of Beck willingly placing herself aboard the inevitable conquest, as a gesture of, what? Trust, confidence, or perhaps something else entirely. A demonstration that the old ways of thinking about hostages, leverage, and power no longer applied in this new paradigm. I will convey your terms to the Imperial Command Council, he said finally, but I cannot guarantee their acceptance. Admiral Quan nodded. We understand. Captain Beck will remain on your vessel for 3 of your planetary rotations as discussions continue. After that time, we will require your formal response. And if that response is rejection? Mira asked, though the answer was obvious. Then we will proceed with the liberation of your subject worlds, Quan said simply. Then establish a containment perimeter around your core systems to prevent further conquest attempts. The message was clear: adapt or be isolated, stripped of empire and confined to a fraction of their former territory. As Vorax and Mira prepared to return to their ship, the Admiral offered one final observation. Captain Vorax, when we first encountered your vessel, you called us cubs, a charming designation, though inaccurate. Her eyes, so alien with just 2 instead of the 4 Tarkarians possessed, somehow conveyed both warning and hope. We were never cubs, Captain. We were wolves who learned that cooperation yields greater success than predation. We are offering you the chance to join our pack rather than face our fangs. Back aboard the inevitable conquest, Vorax found Captain Beck already settled comfortably in the diplomatic quarters prepared for her. She was examining a Tarkarian cultural artifact, a ceremonial hunting blade mounted on the wall with evident interest. Beautiful craftsmanship, she commented as he entered. The balance must be perfect. Vorax nodded, surprised by her assessment. It is. That blade has been in my family for 7 generations. Beck turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. Your admiral has explained our position? In unmistakable terms, he confirmed. Your admiral does not believe in ambiguity, a valuable trait in these circumstances. Beck gestured to a seating area. May we speak frankly, Captain, without the formal constraints of official diplomacy? Vorax hesitated, then nodded, taking a seat opposite her. What would you like to discuss? Your future, she said simply. Not the Empire's, yours personally. The request was unexpected. I fail to see how that's relevant to our current situation. Indulge me, Beck insisted. You have impressed me, Captain Vorax. You adapt quickly. You see beyond cultural conditioning. These are rare traits among any species. Vorax felt uncomfortable under her steady gaze. It was as if those 2 inadequate eyes somehow saw more than his 4 ever could. My future is tied to that of the Empire, he said finally, as it has always been. Beck shook her head slightly. Not necessarily. Change is coming, Captain. The question is whether you'll be swept away by it or help guide it. Understanding dawned. You are suggesting I… what? Betray my empire? Lead some sort of reform movement? I'm suggesting you consider alternatives to a suicidal last stand, Beck clarified. Your council members may choose to go down with their empire rather than adapt. You don't need to join them. The conversation was treading into dangerous territory. Vorax glanced around, aware that his own ship likely had monitoring devices even in these quarters. Beck smiled slightly. Don't worry. This room is currently experiencing a localized dimensional phase shift. Nothing we say can be monitored. Of course, more human technology that defied Tarkarian understanding. Even if I were inclined toward such alternatives, Vorax said carefully, I am one captain. The Empire spans dozens of worlds, with millions of loyal citizens. You underestimate the power of the right voice at the right moment, Beck countered. When systems begin to collapse, people look for new leadership, those who saw the change coming and prepared for it. She leaned forward, her voice intense. There will be a Tarkarian future, Captain, whether it's as a diminished, isolated empire clinging to pride and past glory, or as founding members of something new and potentially greater, that depends on leaders like you. Vorax stared at the human, struck by the strangeness of the moment. Here he was, receiving political advice from a species he'd dismissed as prey just days ago. And yet her words resonated with thoughts he'd harbored privately for years, doubts about the Empire's path of endless conquest, concerns about resource depletion and the sustainability of their expansion. Why would humans want Tarkarians as allies, he asked finally. After what we have done to other species, after how we responded to your initial contact. Beck's expression softened slightly. Because we recognize ourselves in you, the predator instinct, the drive to dominate. We walked that path once, nearly destroyed ourselves following it. Some of our greatest allies now were once our fiercest enemies. She stood, moving to the viewport that showed the stars beyond. The galaxy is vast but not infinite, Captain Vorax. Eventually, expansion through conquest hits its limits. The truly successful species learn to build rather than take, to cultivate rather than consume. Vorax joined her at the viewport, his reflection appearing alongside hers in the transparent material. 2 predator species, so different in appearance yet perhaps not so different in essence. And if I were to consider these alternatives, he said cautiously, what would that mean, practically speaking? Beck turned to face him. It would mean preparing your people for a dramatic cultural shift, identifying others who see the necessity of change, creating a movement that could ease the transition from empire to alliance member. Treason, by current imperial standards, Vorax noted dryly, or foresight, depending on one's perspective. Beck shrugged. History ultimately decides such labels. Vorax fell silent, contemplating possibilities that would have seemed unthinkable just days ago. Everything was changing so quickly. The empire that had seemed eternal, unassailable, was suddenly revealed as vulnerable, its foundational principles questioned. I need time, he said finally, to consider all this. Beck nodded. Of course. But remember, Captain, time is the one resource your empire no longer has in abundance. 3 rotations until we require your council's answer. As she turned away, Vorax found himself asking one final question. Captain Beck, was your offer to stay aboard my vessel truly a gesture of good faith? Or were you assigned to recruit me? Beck smiled. That same slight upturn of the lips that he'd first mistaken for submission, then recognized as confidence, and now understood as something more complex. Let's call it recognizing potential, she replied. Cubs can become wolves, Captain Vorax. But wolves can also become something more, something better. As Vorax left the quarters, his mind raced with possibilities and dangers. The Empire stood at a crossroads, and so did he. The humans had revealed themselves not just as technological superiors, but as ideological revolutionaries, offering a fundamentally different vision of interstellar relations. The decision facing the Imperial Command Council was, in truth, no decision at all. They could adapt or perish. The only real question was whether Vorthax would be swept away in the coming transformation or help guide his people through it. They had called humans cubs, never imagining they were dealing with wolves in disguise. Now Vorth understood the deeper truth. The most dangerous predators weren't those with the sharpest teeth or strongest claws, but those who had learned when not to use them. The hunt had evolved beyond physical conquest, and in this new domain humans were the unquestioned apex predators.